Sure, as you may recall, back in 2004, the city entered into an agreement with a company called Street Outdoor to provide what's essentially big news racks throughout the city. That contract was ended about 6 months ago, 7 months ago. But during the period of that contract, there was a lawsuit filed. The accusation was that the previous city manager of Stanton had improperly removed 3 or 4 news racks, which have been stored by the city ever since. Our position was that they were not improperly removed, that they had proper permits. This case has been going on for a long time. We went for mediation, and we're suggesting a settlement of $20,000, which is less than the cost to litigate the case. Pretty much this is a classic kind of defense settlement, because you're going to spend probably $35,000 to litigate the case, and you may lose. You think you're going to win, but for $20,000, the case gets resolved, they go away. The 3 or 4 news racks that are in Public Works, they've got, I think it's a week in here to pick them up. They'll pick them up, we can dispose of them.
Any questions, Commissioner Amoroso?
I'm going to vote for this, but I don't like it. This was a poor deal from day one. We allowed someone to put boxes in and around our city. They made money from it. The city got nothing. And then they put boxes in places that were not approved. And then they sued us when we removed the boxes. You know, I don't like this. I think it was a bad deal, and hopefully this will never happen again. But unfortunately, you know, this is the way out. Like the attorney said, you know, being sued, you know, we could lose a lot more money. But to throw $20,000 away, I think is crazy.
Okay, any other comments? Commissioner Boyd?
Almost identical to Commissioner Amoroso's one. I don't know that much about the original contract, but I've been in this situation a number of times where we have an adversary to the city. We think we've got a pretty good chance of winning a lawsuit, but it's going to cost money to do it, and it winds up being cheaper to, you know, and it pretty likely winds up being cheaper to just say, all right, can we come to a settlement and here's a chunk of money. And I find it very distasteful also. It almost seems like it encourages people to scam the city, knowing that the city's not going to want to lose more money. But I don't have any solutions, and I don't think any of the rest of us do either. So, you know, I guess that's what I'll vote for it also. But I agree with Commissioner Amoroso. I don't like it.
Commissioner Zerdy?
I don't know whether our appetite would be up here to not accept this and to prove some kind of a point there of the situation in those terms, that we shouldn't be able to just create a situation and get a little payment to go away. I also don't like this, the way the arrangement was made in the first place. I totally agree with the fact that we're generating some business out of this. It was certainly not generating any business at the end there. They're the reason why one of the ways is to clean up the streets, so to speak. So maybe we might look at this as money that we spent to clean up the streets, a little extra money that we would like to use, but it did have a result. It's not a zero effect. There is an effect in place here that does resolve the situation of getting them off the streets in the first place, which the initial agreement was flawed to me, that there wasn't some other money that we could have generated, and by this time, if we did want to get out of it, we would have generated some funds that would say, okay, that counterbalances what we're doing, but that's not the case. So I don't know, if there's no appetite up here for fighting this, and you would spend a little more money, but you could prove a point, and I guess I'd have to go along with this more of a economic decision rather than a principled decision.
Before I comment, I think the city attorney wants to comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an economic decision, but, you know, the contract in 2004 wasn't the best written in terms of the city. You know, so I don't want to make it sound as if this is a slam dunk and we would definitely win this case. I mean, the mediation on this case, they had a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation of all of their issues and why they thought they would win. So, you know, it's not a slam dunk. We believe we'd win, but again, the contract wasn't the best contract in the world 10 years ago. we were able to excise that out clause. If you remember, in January, we passed the motion letting us to get out of it, because it really been extended automatically for 5 years, which that's a clause that I always hate, an automatic extension. People forget 10 years later that there's an automatic extension. So that's an example of the kind of language that was in that contract. So we're glad we caught that, we ended it, we stopped the bleeding, and then the next stop was, you know, put a tourniquet on it and end it. So it is an economic one, because you would spend more than $20,000 just fighting this, and there's always a risk you would lose, and you'd still be at more than 20. You know, I think everybody knows. I'd rather you put $20,000 to be done than give us $30,000 and still, you know, maybe lose. That makes no economic sense to me. I'm trying to save the money.
Well, you know, I tend to agree with Commissioner Zerdy, but unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna make a point if we battle it out, because the nature of our society and our legal system is such, this is happening in municipalities all over America every single day. It's unfortunate. I hate to say it's a cost of doing business, but until you know, our elected officials further up the food chain in Tallahassee and Washington, and so we make different choices perhaps and exert different pressures on the legal system to make some changes, we're going to continue to fight this battle. But we are being, you know, municipalities oftentimes are being extorted. And it's legal extortion. And it is cheaper for us to say, okay, here's $10,000, go away. And that's exactly what a lot of these folks are counting on, and unfortunately, they you know, more times than not, they end up in that situation. So I'm gonna need a motion and a second, because we've got a couple of cards, so we need to move on.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, I have a second. I have Mark Easton, would you like to weigh in, please?
Mark Easton, 130 South H Street. I've been around this ordinance for 10 years, 11 years, the year it went on before it went. This is an ordinance that was written by City Solutions, and the City Commission passed it. It was not good for any of the newspapers in the area. It cost us, it cost the Palm Beach Post, it cost a lot of other news vendors street sales. And it was, the purpose of it was they came with this big fancy modular thing that said, we can put this in here and have them all do that, and you won't have all these news racks around town. Well, in their ordinance and everything, it said any news rack that was not there for 6 months prior to could not have a news rack in their thing without paying for it. Well, for 6 months prior to, we lost 17 news racks to thieves. They just disappeared. They had documentation that we didn't have a news rack there 6 months prior to. All right? Now, I'm not saying they're thieves, but somebody stole our news racks. And we lost a lot of sale locations to that. It was a bad deal that the City Commission went along with. And my concern now is, without this, does that mean there will be no news racks in Lake Worth? Because the ordinance said you had to be in their rack. Now this leaves an opening for no news racks in Lake Worth to follow that ordinance. You need to look into that. Either repeal the ordinance or, you know, find some other way around it. But the ordinance stated that we had to rent rack space from them, which 2 of my racks were involved in the ones that the previous city manager snatched off the street. And one of them was right across the street from the post office. So, anyway, think hard on what's got to be done after this is taken care of.
Thank you, Mark. Nadine Burns, please.
Nadine Burns, 1424 North Elm Street, and one of the city commissioners when that came before us. 2 things. One, I was very dismayed there wasn't enough teeth in there to enforce for the city's protection when they violated the agreement, and they clearly did that. It certainly wasn't the intent to have what happened, and I became quickly aware of it as legitimate newspaper businesses in our city all of a sudden lost their racks and they lost that ability to do it. But also keep in mind, there was a lot of small newspaper distributor things from Motorcycle Weekly, Buy My House and Old Junk Stuff, all up and down the city. So look at how that has to be addressed, and make sure that you look at the ordinance and get something in place that is fair to the newspaper business, fair to the public, but most importantly, takes care of the city and keeps you from having any more additional liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Any final comments? I would like to say that this is probably something we need, city attorney, is this something that you could theoretically look at and render, could you just, would you clean this up? And, you know, without spending a lot of time and money
Yes.
to get us there?
Yes, and again, all the comments are right on. I mean, there was a very sophisticated group that came to town in 2002 or 3, and you're right, they had the commission pass an ordinance that all of a sudden, I didn't know about the new tracks disappearing, and all of a sudden now you have this contract that's pretty much drafted by the same people that drafted an ordinance and benefit themselves. So they had a very good business model. They're all over the country. They're in San Francisco, they're all over. They have thousands of news racks. And again, their slideshows showed all their beautiful news racks all over. Their millions of dollars that they're making. Very smart business people. And the city got bought it, right, exactly. So I'm glad we're out of it. And again, I recommend resolving this and look forward into how do we amend that ordinance and maybe have a work session with you as to what do you want to do with news racks.
Okay, very well. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously.